Well, hello everyone. This is the December 2021. Believe it or not, we are at the end of December, at the end of 2021. I have no idea where the year went. It feels a blur, but it was good no matter what. I think a lot of good things happened in our community, in the world, and hopefully we're going to have a better 2022. So we are closing the year with a special friend coming all the way from, where are you these days? New Zealand or Australia?
No, I'm like apparently half this audience, I live in Melbourne.
You are okay. So there you go. We didn't ask you about your team.
Brunswick East, for those of you following at home.
So yeah, so while we are getting cold on this side of the world, you are all warm up and ready for summer. No. Oh, okay, I don't feel that bad now. It's good. The sweater. But Evan is one of those people that is loved in the community. We all have seen you and we all follow the great work that you're doing with, especially with business agility, but you are more than just business agility. You have brought a lot of interesting concepts to us, like non-projects and other things like that, and now the management as well, right? The lens on management. So I have not much to share today. I'm just going to bring you up on our virtual stage. I want to welcome everyone that joined us, new friends and friends that have been with us for almost 8 years now with Agile Ontario, and looking forward to hearing from Evan, but also feel free to bring your questions and to, make this a conversation. Evan, welcome.
All right, on that, I'm blushing now, but honestly, when Adi asks, the answer is always yes. So of course I'm going to be here. This session is going to be something a little bit different for me, in that normally I'm talking about business agility, this thing behind me here, right? But today I'm going to be touching on one of the facets of business agility, which is the importance of management, but I'm not going to be going into it from a perspective of business agility, or for that matter, from a perspective like what really good management looks like, though I will be covering some of that. I'm going to tell you a story, and I'm going to tell you the story of a bad manager, and pretty much the only story that I can tell without getting in trouble, because it's my story. And it's, let me share my screen, and my slides are a little bit different this time, so I hope you enjoy them. Oops, where's going my, there it is. So the topic, management, you're doing it wrong. Now, let's be honest, some of you here are managers, some of you have been managers, some of you are managing people right now, many of you, in fact, I'm hoping most of you, who have had a manager. And I think we all can sort of visualize in our head what a good manager looks like. Perhaps you may have had one if you're lucky, but I'm certain we've all had bad managers. That seems to be the dominant stereotype and experience that most people have. And there are statistics, thousands of statistics about managers and people leaving managers and leaving organizations because of managers. And I'll cover some of those statistics, but that's not really what I really want to talk about. So let me get my, there we go. For those who don't know me, my name is Evan Leybourn. For my sins, I run the Business Agility Institute. We're a independent research and advocacy organization. We are our members are now in, I think it's like 63 countries now. We are publishing new books. We literally published a book last week on agile recruitment, which is available from Amazon and all good bookstores. We have 14 research teams that we sponsor, looking at things from diversity, equity, inclusion, to leadership, to our newest research, which kicked off about 3 weeks ago, is looking at business schools and which business schools best prepare their graduates to lead in a VUCA environment. These are MBA graduates, versus which business schools are, well, preparing their students to lead in the 1980s, which I suspect is many of them. I should note, I am Australian, which means you're going to get somewhere between hyper enthusiasm and dark cynicism, possibly both at the same time. I'm also working about 4 hours sleep, so you're probably going to get a bit of cynicism today, but I do so with love.
I am, so far sounds amazing, everything.
All right, so that's me. So I want to go back in time to 2008.
Wait a second. You are not
Yes.
Sarah, but you are, this is you when you were younger, right? No, the other picture.
It's a joke.
The other
it's a
picture.
joke. Oh, this one.
This is you younger?
No. I wish I was Leonardo DiCaprio. That would be a way better person. No, so I want to go back to when I was, so 2008. So this is when I was younger. So I had just closed my first, I'd been running a startup. Right? It had run for about 5 years, 2003 to about 2008. And that startup, we specialized in not agile. We used agile, Scrum, XP, TDD, but we specialized in information management systems, business intelligence systems, for those of you who are familiar with data warehousing and business intelligence. So we did that. I ran that company for about 5 years. We were a small company in Canberra here in Australia. I had 6 employees at most times. I think we went up to about 10 at one point, but we were a small company. In 2008, global financial crisis, it's a good excuse, but to be honest, it was time to close the company anyway. We closed the company, liquidated, paid out everyone's leave, left with about 10 grand in the bank. So that came out positive, which is always a good thing if you're closing a startup. And I made the jump into the Australian public service, right? And I became an executive. I was, for those of you in Australia who may know, the government EL2, executive level 2. This was the most senior role I'd ever had in my life. I took this chance because it was a great opportunity. I thought I could do the job. It was the director of business intelligence, so business intelligence. It was in charge of a $35 million whole of government program. Great opportunity. And I came in, I interviewed well. Evan, can you do the job? Like, yeah, this is how you do this is how you do this. They were intrigued by this agile thing that I was talking about at the time. And yeah, I got what was effectively a promotion into the most senior role I'd ever had. Now, the problem is I didn't really know what I was doing. I got that job because I could talk about the job, because I could talk about what was required in that role. I knew business intelligence. I'd run a small company doing business intelligence. Right? I was confident, and I use that word in its most negative connotation. Right? And I'll talk a little bit at the end about I suppose, what I learned here. And confidence is one part of success. But that was the part I had. And that was really the only part I had. And I remember I saw a tweet like a year ago, just like, God save us from confident middle-aged white men. Right? And I was not middle-aged, I was the youngest director in the public service, but I was definitely the first two of those. Right? And I got the job. Now, yes, I could articulate, yes, I knew what was going on, but it was the confidence that got me the job. It was the confidence that I could do the job that got it to me. Now, there's a huge difference here. Right? Running a team, running a project is a far cry from running a whole of government program. Running a budget of that size, I'd run P&L. I'd run a small business. Of course, I'd done a P&L. Right? Our turnover as a small business was about 600K, 800K a year. It was nothing. Right? Not $35 million, not trying to coordinate across 6 different government agencies, not trying to get data sharing agreements across 6 different government agencies. These were, I knew the business intelligence stuff. Right? I knew what I was meant to do or what was meant to be done from a practical standpoint, but I wasn't a good manager. Here's the thing. We all assume, or at least many of us, and certainly I did, we assume that management is easy. And partly because we've had so many bad bosses. And as I said in the outline of this talk, none of us would look at a nurse, a doctor, an engineer, a builder, a laborer, a janitor, and assume we could do their job without training. Right? We assume that, okay, the janitor may only have a day's on-the-job training, right? But, and to be fair, I suspect to be a good janitor, it takes a lot more than a day's training to be a good janitor. And 8 years for a doctor, right? Another 5 for a specialist. These are not, there's no assumption that we don't need training. And yet we look at our boss and we go, I can do that job and I can do it better. Right? Because that's what we've all been trained to see. And think about Dilbert, right? Who's the manager in Dilbert? The pointy head boss, right? The office or office space. Managers are seen as incompetent at best and evil at worst, right? And when we look at, and I'm going to step out of my own story for a second and just look at an industry, right? We see this pattern across thousands of companies, tens of thousands of companies worldwide. Right? Managers aren't, there is a misunderstanding about the skill required in management. And there is a misunderstanding about the importance of a good manager. We talk about it, right? People leave managers, not companies. Right? We know, we've all experienced bad managers, but we don't do anything about it. Right? But management is a skill. Management, like any other skill, can be learnt. It can be practiced and trained. Right? It doesn't mean you have to be a good manager when you first start, but you damn well better be a good manager before you go take too much longer in the role. And I think there was a career builder study, something like 58% of managers receive no training when they become a manager. 3 out of 5 managers have no training, no formalized, or for that matter, informalized education about what skills are required. And I don't know about you, but kind of think that's important. I received no training. I got thrown into this role as an executive, and it's like the assumption was I knew what to do because management is easy, right? Because we can all be managers. We promote people who are good at their job into management roles because it's the next level of their career, forgetting that it's an entirely different and fundamentally, in some cases, misaligned skill set. We believe that we can be managers if someone would just give us a chance. I could do better than my boss if someone would just give me a chance. And that arrogance, that assumption is so poisonous to, well, all things management, that it destroys companies. And you see, the big problem with everything I've just said is, given how bad many managers are, you might be actually better than your boss. You might do a better job than your boss with no training and no experience, right? Because better than bad doesn't actually mean good. And we accept such subpar management experience and management expertise. And I think you can all, like, you've all got those experiences, those managers who you really just don't know how they got the job. And you could do it better. And it poisons everything, right? Because the next manager, well, actually, let me go. I'll come to that in a second. Right? These bad managers lead, no. The behaviors of a bad manager become so indoctrinated in the culture of an organization that it becomes the status quo. It becomes the way management works. Right? So micromanagement. Right? We know it's bad, but it is endemic in organizations all around the world, and many don't know there's any other way of doing it. Right? Presenteeism. Right? The idea that you have to be seen to be promoted, or seen to be whether you're actually doing work doesn't matter. You just have to be seen to be doing work. Right? This Silicon Valley culture of hustle porn, the idea, and granted, the irony of someone who's working on 4 hours sleep talking about hustle porn, but this, in my defense, I was at a conference yesterday and I was out with friends drinking. So my lack of sleep is my own fault, not for any other reason.
At least it's for fun.
Indeed. But the culture of hustle porn, this idea that you have to be like working long hours, you have to be hustling every moment of the day, otherwise you're not a good manager, you're not a good leader, or in the Silicon Valley case, you're not a good founder. Right? You've got issues of risk avoidance. Right? Meetings are a beautiful way of avoiding risk. Decision by committee. Right? We can all happily sit in a meeting and talk, and the consensus will decide. As a manager, I don't need to put any of my own personal risk into that decision. I just need to go, yeah, we all agree. All right, can we take the minutes? Thank you very much, Joe. Thank you. We'll send an email around. That's the decision, and off we go. No one made the decision. The decision was made by the ether. And when you think about the skill of a manager, they're meant to be making decisions. Not all the decisions, because we want to empower our teams, and that's an entirely, we'll get to that in a second. But even in a traditional non-agile organization, we expect managers to make decisions, and they don't, because they're bloody incompetent. So we call these subconscious avoidance techniques. Right? Managers bad managers subconsciously know they're not great at their job. And so they will do anything to avoid the problem. Right? They will avoid making decisions. They will put decisions to committee. They will micromanage so that they know everything, so that they can feel confident in their management. And these behaviors come again because we don't train people. And do you want to know what the worst thing is? The absolute worst thing about this is that good managers see these bad managers and assume that's what management is. They assume that these anti-patterns are that's what they have to be. And so they start adopting these anti-patterns. They think meetings are important. They think they need to check in on their teams every 15 minutes to figure out what the hell is going on. And we lose them. We lose these really great people into a system that's broken. I know, was it Drucker or Deming who says, like, a bad system will beat a good person every time. And that's exactly what happens here. These managers who have potential are destroyed. And I'll come back to my story in a second, because I was very, very lucky. I could have the Evan who's sitting here today may have been a very different person had certain things not gone my way, or certain people in my life hadn't stepped in. But without that support structure, without that positive reinforcement of those good behaviors, these bad behaviors are made manifest. Now, the good news is it's a skill. Management is a skill. It can be learned. You can learn through education. You can go on training courses. There's 1,000 training courses. Hell, do an MBA. They're not great, as our research is showing, but you'll learn management skills. Maybe some old-fashioned management skills, but you'll still learn some. IC Agile's got their leadership course. Scrum Alliance has their CAL. There's heaps of courses. But anyone who knows learning theory knows that formal education is 10% of how much you learn. Right? 70% is learned on the job, surrounded by people who are good. So we need to create a small cohort of good managers who are mentors. Right? And if you're a manager, go find a mentor. Even if you think you're a good manager, go find a mentor. Right? Because you can get better. I have a mentor, right? Because I know I'm not perfect. Right? In the Institute, I'm the CEO. Right? Laura Powers, who's one of my reports, she's the Chief Operating Officer. She teaches me on a nearly daily basis how to be a better manager. Right? I'm her boss, right? And she's teaching me because I have things to learn from her. And I will be learning from people for the rest of my life if I have anything to do with it.
You were brave to get. You're brave to get Laura.
She is definitely someone who she will teach me whether I wanted to or not. Yes. But luckily, I do want to. Right? So because it's no matter how good you are, no matter how much experience you have as a manager, there is more to learn. Right? And the best way to learn isn't through a 2-day IC Agile class. No offense to the IC Agile folk. They're a member of ours. I love them dearly, but no offense to them. You will learn better with mentors and coaches and peers, right, than you will from a course. Courses are good at creating a baseline understanding, not good at establishing new skills in a sustainable way. Right? So find people, find a network of peers who can teach you, who can help you, who can sort of make you be better. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about what good management looks like. Back to my story. So when I joined the public service, I got the job because I was confident. I got the job because I knew what I was doing, right? So I had competence and I had confidence. Actually, I'm going to stop sharing for a second because I'm going to draw something for you. I can get a piece of paper. 2 seconds, because I'm going to draw something for you.
Is it going to be a cat? I have the feeling he's going to draw a cat.
So I had two things. Pen, there we go. I had confidence and I had competence, if I can spell that word correctly. Two things. The problem is I was missing a third. Now, this, by the way, is just Evan's idea. Like, this isn't a model of management or leadership or anything like that. I've not published this. I've spoken about it a few times, but this is just something that's been rattling around my head for 10 years.
It's not a quadrant yet. You have to make it a quadrant to be.
It's not a quadrant, it's a triangle.
Yeah.
I was missing the third side, empathy. And to be fair, I was missing half of the second side as well, competence. I was good at the core skill, but I wasn't good at being a manager. So for me, I argue that these three things are necessary to be successful in life, just generally. So here's the thing: confidence and competence without empathy is arrogance. And that's exactly what my boss told me. And I've always prided myself on being a listener, someone who was empathetic, someone who I've always been, I'm shy. I'm incredibly shy. It's not obvious because I have trained myself to put myself out there, but I am incredibly shy. I am introverted. Yeah, anyway, I won't get into that because that's an entirely different story. But I've always prided myself on respecting other people. When my boss at the time, so he's the first assistant secretary, Australian government secretary. I think Canada's the same. Secretary is the topmost rank, and the minister obviously is the government appointed, but the secretary is the CEO or managing director equivalent. So first assistant secretary was my boss, and I'm about a month into the job. I'm hitting my KPIs, all that kind of thing, as much as you can in the first month. And he pulls me into his office and he says, "Evan, got some feedback for you. You have to stop being so arrogant." And this just blew my mind, because I don't see myself, or I still don't see myself as an arrogant person. But what was happening was I was expressing confidence. I realized very early on that I was learning this competence. Right? So I was trying to balance out my lack of skill, right, with an overabundance of confidence. Right? Again, save us from middle-aged, confident white men. Right? So this balancing act was not tempered with empathy, right? For my teams, for the people who reported to me, for the people who reported to them. And that lack of empathy created this perception that I was this arrogant asshole. Apologies for anyone who doesn't like swearing. This idea, and that, I'll be honest, shook me to my core, right? Because that's not my mental model of myself. And I don't know how many of you have had feedback that was in contrast to your mental model. it's one thing to get feedbacks like, Evan, you can get better at this. You need to improve your your skills of communication. You need to improve how like estimating skills, all these kind of things. Fine. All right. Those aren't parts of your self-identity. No one identifies as an expert in estimation, and thus, well, I'm sure some do, right? But it's not part of that core identity. For me, arrogance as a cultural, as a personality trait was something that it wasn't just that arrogance wasn't part of my cultural, my personal identity. It's that arrogance was the opposite of what I had held as my personal identity. And so this feedback of, Evan, you're being arrogant, honestly shook me. And I'm glad of it. I wasn't at the time. But I got told this, I remember it was on a Friday, right? And I went to, I can remember literally walking down the street in Kingston in Canberra, one of the suburbs. And it's like, I'm just sort of, I'm not angry, I'm not seething, I'm just trying to process this dichotomy, Saturday morning at this point, right? And I've got these two worldviews fighting in my head. And remember, I'm fighting at the same time imposter syndrome, right? Because the reason I'm balancing this confidence, right, I'm overabundance of confidence, is because I didn't believe, and I didn't have the competence. No one taught me how to do my job. No one taught me how to be a good manager. Right? And to be fair, that like the government doesn't have that. Well, maybe they do now, but certainly like 12, 14 years ago, they didn't have that level of education for managers. Right? You got an onboarding session and that was it. So I'm fighting imposter syndrome plus this dichotomy in my head about these two worldviews, how I see myself and how others are seeing me. And what ended at the end was an understanding that good management, right, was, for first of all, it was a skill and something I had to learn, but I had to recognize and be honest, not just with myself, though definitely with myself, but also with the people who reported to me about where I lacked in terms of the competence, and then use that to build empathy, not just empathy with me, but my empathy with them. So I could listen, I could learn, I could hear. And there's actually a second story here, because this is also the story of where I first discovered business agility. And I don't pretend to have invented business agility, but there was a moment in my life, literally walking down that Kingston street, where in my own head, it's like this thing that called agile, capital A, agile, that I'd been using to help tech teams back when I was like project manager and a team leader and running my own little business. We used agile to help manage collaboration and cooperation, right, to get things moving and to balance unknowns. Right? We didn't have all the information. We didn't have every requirement. So agile helped us iterate and adapt. So I remember this aha moment as I'm walking down the street. I can literally even remember the tiles of the footpath as I was walking past. And there's this moment where I'm going, maybe this agile thing will work as a manager as well. Now, to be fair, I wouldn't call what I was doing or what I thought of as business agility. I would call it agile business, because it really was, how can I apply Scrum to management? Which definitely is not the right approach, but hey, look, we all have to start somewhere. Exactly. So I come back to the office and it's Monday morning, and we have our stand-up, because we were still doing stand-ups, not that kind of thing, even though we weren't really agile in any material way. So we were doing this, so we did our stand-up, and I literally had to stand in front of them and say, look, I just have to own this, right? here's where I'm lacking. This is what I'm working on. And here's the issues. And it worked. Right? The teams had enough respect for me and the skill I brought in. Because I said, I may not have been a good manager. I may have got the job through confidence, but I did know what I was talking about. Right? They restricted the core skill enough to give me the chance to develop the management skill. Right? And I then spent the next, well, let's be honest, lifetime learning those management skills because it never ends. Now, I'll come back to this. I'll go back to my slide shortly, but I'll go back to this. So confidence and competence without empathy is arrogance. Right? But there are three sides here. Right? Empathy and confidence without competence is a fraud. Right? And empathy and competence without confidence is untrustworthy. I hate to say it. It's not that you're not, sorry, it's perceived as untrustworthy. Not that you are untrustworthy, but we as humans trust confident people. It is a very sad state of affairs, and it explains a lot about our political systems. Okay? So if there is a side of this triangle, and again, this is just Evan's, this isn't some fancy like Cotter's theory of change or whatever else. This is just Evan drawing on a piece of paper. But for me, ever since like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when I was doing this, I sort of had these, I sort of drew this triangle, and it's like, I need all three. And so I see these three as like, this is what success looks like for me. Right? I need all three in equal parts. I need to develop that empathy, or at least stop hiding the empathy. I need to acknowledge the competence lack and develop that, because otherwise I'm not going to go very far in life. And I am many things, but I am definitely ambitious. Right? And I would like to be successful in life. I would like to achieve my goals. And for that, I need those three things. Right? And being shy and introverted, I have to work on the confidence sometimes. I'm always learning competence, and empathy is not intrinsic. It is something that can be learned as well. So developing that too. So let me just talk more generally there for a second. Oh, that's the wrong one. Here it is. So key skills for managers, things that I have learned over, well, my life. Right? Number one, talking, honest. And I saw inside the chat, someone said radical candor. Right? Creating that open line of dialogue. But I also go so far as to say there are skills of influence and persuasion that need to come into play here as well. So communication is good, but communication with purpose is better. And understanding, and so when I ran training, I used to run communication, like I had this the soft skills for software was a training course I used to run. And I would do like the Thomas Kilmann negotiation techniques. And so we'd actually literally like get people to take different negotiation stances, because the goal was to get them to learn how to communicate with purpose with different stances and everything else like that. It's really good stuff. All right. Delegation. All right. Managers need to learn how to delegate. And I don't mean delegating outputs, I mean delegating outcomes. Now, there's a flip side, right, in that when you delegate, you have to delegate to someone who can be delegated to. You have to delegate to someone who can take ownership. And so as a manager, you've also got to develop the skill of ownership in your teams, because it's two sides. You can't delegate to people who can't take ownership. It's two sides of the same coin. Right? Yeah, that's the delegating outcomes. We know from our research that teams that can take ownership, teams that are held to account on business outcomes, will pretty much outperform everybody else, which leads to job satisfaction, which is pretty much what we want to try and achieve in most organizations. You and I and all of us, we spend more time working than any other part of our lives, including spending time with our family, lockdown notwithstanding. That's not a value. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's not a value judgment. It's just a statement of fact. So work should be, if it's the biggest part of your life, it should damn well be one of the best parts of your life as well. Anything less is a waste of human potential. Right? So this communication, this delegation of outcomes, this autonomy, mastery, and purpose that we talk about, this creates that job satisfaction. This creates that purpose-driven people. Right? No, not that one, sorry. There you go. Instilling purpose. Right? As we don't work for fun, most of us, right? We work because we want to achieve something. We want to achieve an outcome. And your organization, no matter what kind, like it's very easy to instill a purpose if you are a not-for-profit charity, right? It's really hard to instill purpose if you're a hedge fund, but you need to. And I would say a hedge fund manager, as in a people manager in a hedge fund, probably needs better management skills than a manager in Oxfam or Save the Children, right? Because you've got a much higher task of instilling this and creating that ownership when you're trading stocks, right? But it's one of the key skills. Right? Now, purpose means a lot of different things to different people. It's not good enough to, your vision statement on the wall isn't good enough, right? Because purpose is personal. Too many P's in that sentence, right? The art of management is to convey purpose that works for you, or rather the person that you're talking to. And when you're talking to the next person, right, that purpose is realigned. It's all the same purpose, it's the same goals, right? But the personal interpretation of it, the personal adoption of that purpose, that's a very hard word to say so many times, is literally something that needs to be developed. And I don't think a lot of managers have that skill. They're very good at conveying what's on the wall, the vision statement and the mission statement, but it's not good enough. All right, strategy. Leaders, managers need to learn strategy. And I'll be precise, emergent or strategic agility, because this is such a key facet of the modern economy and modern management. If managers don't know how to do this, well, that's what's going to happen. That's literally the importance of strategy. The skill of people development. We need, and I don't mean developing skills. A good manager develops the whole person. Right? They develop them to be the best possible version of themselves. And so many managers that I've had in my life, and I really saw people development as, what training course would you like to go on next quarter? No, that's not people development. People development is giving them the skills necessary to be successful in their life, career, right? Complementary skills, tertiary skills, right? Teacher developer communication, teacher and accountant code, right? Give them new and diverse skills, but don't forget then the these are people. Teach them to be whole people. I have had good managers who have, I've watched them work with their team and developing things like emotional resilience to stress. Right? Work is stressful. And if you have a manager that can teach you, teach is the wrong word, that can develop you into be better at handling stress, now that's a manager you want to hang on to for as long as you can, because that's a damn good person. Right? So the goal, of course, is to keep people happy, because people don't leave organizations, they leave managers. And that's what we need to shift. We need to shift it so that managers are the reason people stay and not the reason people leave. I have friends who have good managers and they've stayed in the same job for 10 years. They could have been promoted, they could have more money, but they have such job satisfaction, they enjoy what they're doing because of the people around them that they've stayed there. And I'm not saying that staying in a place for 10 years is the goal, but certainly like leaving every 2 because you can't find good people to work with, well, that's definitely a problem. So for me, hang on. The last skill, a culture of learning and experimentation. Leaders have to create the space for people to try new things. And we talk about psychological safety. We talk about growth mindset. A growth mindset comes from within, but it is nurtured by your managers, is nurtured by the people around you and the space they create for you to have a growth mindset, for you to run those experiments, to try new things. So for me, after I got that feedback, I spent a long time trying to figure out what a good manager looks like. And I don't have all the answers. But what I can say is that for those of you who are managers and those of you who want to be, the skills are achievable. They are things that you can learn, and you don't need to fake it. Right? You don't need to pretend you're something you're not because you want that corner office. The corner office doesn't exist anymore. Right? Managers have a bad rap. The pointy head boss, office space, the office. Right? These people they've poisoned this concept. So I call upon each of you to reclaim the word management. Right? Stop talking. We've replaced the word manager with the word leader, because leader is untainted so far-ish. Actually, it's getting tainted now. Right? But we use the word leader as a synonym for manager because managers have because it's a bad word now. So I call on each of you to reclaim that word. Management is a skill, a series of skills, and they are important skills, and they can be learnt. And a bad manager can be redeemed. Right? And that was me. Not, I'd love to be him, more so than Leo at the beginning. A bad manager can be redeemed, and there is a lot that can be done to improve the lives, the welfare of everyone if we do so, because this is such a systemic problem across organizations around the world. So that's my kind of rant, story, ramble, all of the above. Right? So yeah, that's me basically. And hopefully, I like to think I'm a better manager now. Laura thinks I'm a better manager now. So she's still working with me. So there's that. But it comes from a point of acknowledging that maybe you're not as hot as you think you are. And once you realize that, you can do something about it.
Thanks for bringing that story with so much vulnerability as well. because it was emotional, and you told something that probably not everybody knows about, and there are a lot of people that probably don't feel confident to share all of that, and probably it's not easy. So thank you for being real. There are some questions. Do you have some time for questions?
Always.
So Dave has a question. How did Evan build empathy, grow?
How did Evan build empathy?
Right.
So
How did Evan develop empathy?
yeah. So I'm going to answer the specific question and then the general question. So the truth is I didn't not have empathy, but my empathy was hidden because I was so focused on the confidence piece. I was so focused on trying to look like a good manager. And while I was trying to figure this one out, I forgot. Oh, sorry, this one. Sorry, I forgot the empathy. It was once I was vulnerable to my team, once I was open with them, the empathy was implicit. It was there. I'm not saying it happened overnight, but because it takes time to build the rapport and everything that was required for empathy. So the more generic answer, like how do you develop empathy in general? And it really comes from shared and diverse experiences. And there's some really great books on developing empathy and so forth, but there has to be it starts with a willingness to experience other things, experience other insights. And we talk about like walk a mile in someone else's shoes. You can't do that. There's an entire history to that person that puts them in that place. You might be able to walk a mile in their today's shoes, but the shoes they were wearing when they were 6 have as much of an influence on them today, in fact, perhaps more so than the shoes that they're wearing right now. And you don't know what shoes they were wearing when they were 6 years old. That metaphor got weird. But my point was that, or is that, you have to be willing to put yourself out there, but also recognize that you will never have complete information. And so a big part of empathy is just acknowledging that you don't know everything and that you have to accept some things on face value. And I'll take like mental health as an example. If you don't suffer from anxiety or depression or any other sort of mental health issues,
I think we have some technical problems.
it's hard to go, oh, I know what you're feeling. I understand. No, you don't. You don't understand. What you can do is you can take how they feel on faith. You can accept it and
Uh-oh.
We're going to take it in faith, what he's saying.
all right. I just dropped off the network.
Yeah. Okay, we hear you now.
All right. So I was just saying, so you can't walk a mile in their shoes, but you can trust where they are and trust what they say. Right. So there's a lot more to developing empathy than what I've said. That's the entire. There's 2 days just on that, but this is just pointers to get started.
Fantastic. I know we are kind of tired, but I want to get just one more question. Jeff, do you have one question?
No, I've got like 6.
No, pick one. We don't have time for 6.
Okay. You know what? Let me ask this one. In the official Leybourn management model, the triangle that you've got, I wonder, Evan, if there's, and I'm just wondering if you've given any thoughts to this. You identified confidence, competence, and empathy. And I'm wondering if competence, there's actually 2 dynamics of that. One is the job itself, and 2 is the competence of leading and managing other people And I wonder if those are two separate competencies. And I guess my question is,
So
have you given any explicit thought to that?
So I would say, how I give an explicit thought, not really. I would say that there's more than two. There's probably a dozen competencies in any given space. So I think the key is understanding the competencies that are required, and competencies plural. So you're right, but I think there's more than two.
I'll buy that.
Okay, we are a little bit over time, but thanks everyone that is still around. Evan, thank you again for bringing that true story and sharing with us that experience. I think everyone can learn from that, because we're all are growing as leaders, and there is a question here. I was like, is this like servant leader? And I think, I mean, if we want that true management, there is parts of servant leadership there. So we're all are trying to get there, and the story and the way you are framing it helps everyone to get the confidence that we probably miss into needing the empathy and the competency. Thank you also to everyone that joined us tonight. I think it is good to see everyone before the holidays begin and you all get into the festivities. So I hope I am the first one to wish everyone happy holidays, and hopefully a wonderful new year ahead for everyone. And I hope to see you again on our sessions in the new year. Thank you.
Thanks, Artie.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone. And please, if you do have questions, reach out to me.
Right.
Thank you.
Post-it notes of questions.